I do think brands like LS tend to have more breakdowns than other brands. And I want to tell you why I think that is. I want to talk about problems with these tractors. This is my LS tractor. I haven't had a lot of problems with it, but I have heard of a lot of people having problems with them. And I think there's a couple really good reasons that we hear about all these problems people are having with tractors like this LS. And it's not just limited to LS tractor. It's a lot of budget tractor brands. Kioti tractor, for example, TYM. I don't know, who else is selling a budget tractor? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, right out the gate, I do want to let you know I sell tractors. I sell LS and Kioti tractors. I am not here to be an apologist for these brands. They can have problems. All brands can have problems, but I'm wondering, do they have more problems than other brands? I don't have the data to tell you yes or no on that, but do we hear about more problems with them? Yeah, I think we do. And there's a very good reason for that. Actually, a couple really good reasons. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I do think brands like LS tend to have more breakdowns than other brands. And I want to tell you why I think that is. In order to tell you why I think that is, I want to talk about what I used to do before I sold tractors, which was selling cars. I was in the automotive industry for 12 years. And there was something really interesting I saw that surprised me. It happened in the automotive industry, and now it happens in the tractor industry. So what happens in the car industry is not all manufacturers make their own stuff. They'll have other companies make them cars, right? So Toyota will make cars for other brands sometimes. I don't know if it happens as much anymore as it used to, but for a while, Chevy and Toyota had a partnership. Toyota made the Toyota Corolla, and Chevy had the Chevy Prism. And wouldn't you know it, they were the same car. My dad owned a Chevy Prism because he could buy it for less money than a Toyota Corolla, and it was the same car. But if you ever looked at Consumer Reports or any of these outlets that gave you quality information on cars, you would see that the Corolla always outperformed the lowly Chevy Prism. Kind of weird, right? They were the same car. Why was one performing better than the other in quality testing, as reported by consumers? Kind of weird. To complicate matters even further, I was a Chrysler salesperson. The Chrysler Town and Country minivan and the Dodge Grand Caravan were the exact same machine. The Chrysler was more expensive. It might have had a couple nicer options. The Grand Caravan was a little less expensive. It was more the budget option. Oftentimes they'd be sold to rental fleets. And in quality tests, even though these were the exact same machines, with the exception of the leather maybe, the mechanical quality was always rated higher on the Town and Country than the Dodge Grand Caravan. How could that be? They were the same machine. And I came up with this idea, and again, this is anecdotal, but it's what I saw from my customers. Oftentimes, my customers who bought the cheapest thing possible treated it like a cheap piece of garbage, or didn't maintain it, or couldn't afford to maintain it, or ignored a small problem until it snowballed into a large problem. Whereas my customer who bought the higher priced product oftentimes spent the money to take care of it, because either they could afford to maintain that machine properly and really take care of their investment, which don't invest in a car, it's a depreciating asset. But it was an investment, and they were going to keep plugging money into that investment. I saw it all the time. Somebody bought the cheapest thing, just treated it like garbage, and it was garbage, and then they thought it was garbage. But what happened with the Toyota versus the Chevy? There wasn't that big of a price difference. But the Toyota buyer, to my eyes, thought they were buying a higher quality machine, and they treated it like a higher quality machine. And so when they had problems, they would kind of shrug off those problems. Whereas the Chevy Prism buyer, thinking that they had bought an inferior product, again, treated it like an inferior product and was way less forgiving. So they would yell and scream about these relatively minor problems. Again, anecdotal evidence, but you can see where I'm coming from, that people will have a confirmation bias in their own life, where if I believe I bought the nicest thing in the world, I will treat it like the nicest thing in the world, and it will be the nicest thing in the world. My perception shapes my reality. I've also seen this in the tractor industry. People who buy John Deere's will tell me, this is the greatest machine ever built. They never break down. This will happen while the tractor is in my shop, broken down, a blown up transmission. And I'll say, I've been working it pretty hard. The transmission blew up. Greatest machine ever built, though. They never have any problems. It happens all the time. Whereas the budget tractor buyers oftentimes maybe couldn't really afford the tractor they needed, so they bought too small of a machine and beat the living sin out of it. We see it all the time, coming in with caved-in parts because they're bashing into stuff. They bought the wrong machine, and then they destroy it, and they're upset because their machine broke. But there's also, again, that confirmation bias. I often get people who are buying budget machines and decided that they're pieces of garbage. So any little problem that happens becomes a huge problem because this thing's a piece of trash. And they would have never had the problem if they'd bought a John Deere or a Kubota. Oftentimes I'll ask the buyer, well, why didn't you buy the John Deere or Kubota? And they'll say, you realize how expensive these things are? I could never afford that. So I had to buy this piece of junk. And I can almost categorically guarantee you, had the buyer bought the John Deere or Kubota that was similar to the budget machine they bought and treated it in the same fashion, they would have had just as many problems. But there's no way to prove it, is there? Because we can't do the scientific method on this. We can't have a control group of people buying generic tractor versus people buying the expensive and cheap tractor. But anecdotally, I can say, oftentimes people who are buying a cheap, inexpensive machine maybe aren't maintaining it all that well, or treating it all that well, or have just decided that it's not a good machine and have gone out to prove it. Because I've had many customers who have done that very thing. They've broken something small on their tractor, it has angered them, and then they have gone out and purposely broken something bigger. Maybe they didn't know they were purposefully doing it, but when a machine comes in with a caved-in loader bucket, and then they complain that the loader has broken, that says to me that they have purposefully hurt their machine to prove that their machine was inferior. And then, of course, they'll go and tell everybody on earth how bad it is. So are there more people complaining about LS tractors or Kioti tractors or John Deere tractors or New Holland tractors? I don't know. But I do know we got to be really careful with the information we receive, because a confirmation bias does often exist. And I think budget tractors are victims of this budget mentality and this I'm buying a piece of junk mentality, which feeds into a confirmation bias. That we should really talk about is engagement. So if you are on YouTube, or you are on Google, or you are on Facebook or Meta or whatever they call themselves now, or you are on Instagram, or you're on wherever, the number one most important thing to those platforms is your engagement. When you are watching this video, hopefully you do not click away from it. And if you do not click away from it, YouTube knows that this was something that was engaging to you. Whether it made you happy or sad really doesn't matter. They just want you engaged. We've seen a lot on Facebook, for example. Different political views really get reinforced through their algorithm. Maybe somebody really makes you mad in politics. Facebook will feed you more and more and more about that person. It'll make you think this person's just a complete demon. And then you wonder why somebody else doesn't see the same thing. It's because they are not being fed the same thing. Engagement is very important in social media and on YouTube and on Google, keeping you watching. So keep that in mind when you're researching machines. If you search Massey Ferguson tractor problems, you're going to be fed Massey Ferguson tractor problems over and over and over. And there's going to be a confirmation bias that begins, where all of a sudden all you see is Massey Ferguson tractor problems. And reality might not be that they have that many problems, but you're going to hear about a lot of problems because that's all you're being fed because you are engaged with it. So just keep that in mind when you're researching problems with machines, is you're going to be engaged with whatever upsets you, and you're going to hear and see more of it because that keeps you on these platforms watching.